Hello and welcome to CHGO Red Stars Podcast presented by PointsBet. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up to get two risk-free bets up to $2,000. Welcome back, everybody. It's your girl Sandra here today, as always, with my friend, homie, and colleague Claire Watkins, aka the Scam Originator. How you doing today, Claire?
I'm doing good. We're in this weird in-between stage. As everybody knows, this is really a weather podcast where the days are clearly getting shorter, right? Like it's getting darker sooner. You can feel it, but it's still kind of hot. So it's like, is it summertime? Is it fall? Is it pumpkin spice? Is it t-shirt and shorts? What is it, Sandra?
It's both. It's like you got to wear your long sleeve with your shorts.
Yeah.
Or maybe you have to wear your...
Or like you have like daytime versus nighttime.
Yeah, or you do your jeggings with your tank. Like it's a mix. It's a real mix.
Are y'all pro pumpkin spice or anti pumpkin spice?
Listen, I don't want
to too sweet for me. I can't lie.
I don't want to start any drama here early on the
Why
show.
not?
But I'm an absolute simp for apple. I am truly someone who believes it's the superior of the fall flavors.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a hot take earlier today. I threw it on Twitter, so people knew it was hot. I was like, real first world problems, but like I was real disappointed in the fall menus for both Dunkin' and Starbucks. Dunkin' has a few apple drinks on there, or excuse me, Starbucks has a few apple drinks, but there's like it's absolutely zero for Dunkin'. I mean, no apple drinks. Yeah. No apple treats.
Yeah.
And the two of them can quite frankly just go in the trash bin because there's absolutely no cranberry, which doesn't get enough love for me either. So, never too early to talk about fall takes as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's it's big fall vibes in NWSL too, right? It's like we're at the beginning of the end, which is truly wild.
It's it's the final stretch. There's literally a month of games
left,
for the Red Stars specifically. We're recording this coming live with everybody on September 2nd, and the last game for Chicago I believe is October 2nd. So there's just there's just not a lot of time left in the regular season, and maybe we had started to allude to that a little bit, like in the previous episode where we were previewing the game against Racing Louisville, how Chicago is still sort of navigating these away matches, and how sort of coming off of the more recent results that they've had, that maybe this match against Racing didn't necessarily feel like a must win, right? We didn't frame it in that way, but we definitely came on here and we're like, look, man, it's pro sports. We're looking at this team on the calendar here, and this Chicago Red Stars team should go and beat that Racing Louisville team. That was definitely an energy that we brought on the pod, and we leaned into it a little bit. And quite frankly, I'm glad we did, because Chicago ended up taking that road trip to Louisville and walked away with they just stomped Racing in this game.
Yeah, I mean, results-wise, if we're starting with just the points, like the points actually ended up being very important, right? Yeah. Because Kansas City won and Angel City won, and so those teams that they're right on that bubble with also won this weekend. It's kind of funny if you look at I think some people, and they're cool to see, have done the graph of where everybody is on the table, and what we've seen for Chicago is a weird amount of steadiness in the last 6 weeks or so, win or lose. Like they'll lose and they won't really dip, and they'll win and they won't really go up. And so they are, I think, averaging out to have very similar results to the teams around them. And wins are part of that, right? If they had lost, I think they'd be out of playoff position right now. So that's huge. It ended up being a really important 3 points. And even more so, it definitely felt like, I mean, I'm not sure, maybe in 2013, 2014, but to go from a 4-0 loss to a 4-0 win is like, you don't see that a ton.
NWSL, baby.
Yeah, right. Especially this year. Good Lord.
That's the energy, 100%. Yeah. I did have a similar thought, quite frankly, like for Chicago, because who doesn't love some dingers, right? This is America. We love the home run and the touchdown. So it was like, okay, so they were like racking them up in this match against Louisville, and I did have a similar passing thought where I was just like, for a team that's had a couple of score lines with a 4 on it, and they've been on the losing end of it.
Right.
I believe they had 4-1 with Houston, right? And then they've had that 4-0 loss against Courage. I had a similar. I was just like, it's nice that the Red Stars can maybe do that to somebody else.
Yeah.
Like I absolutely had that feeling about it. But I think for me, you know, in this game and having them sort of have a really big performance like this it's just how they kind of like really got that ball rolling early in this match. I mean, you're talking about Mal Pugh just putting together a really stellar performance immediately in this game. It took the Red Stars about 3 minutes to get the goal scoring started, but you know, I think maybe of all of the goals in this match, maybe this opening goal might have been my favorite, just because it was really nice to kind of see that link up between Bianca St. George's and Mal Pugh to kind of go ahead and set the tone, quite frankly, with this racing side.
Yeah, I asked Pugh about this a little bit at the end of after the game, which I think we saw. Obviously, Louisville gave them some space. I think Louisville made some big mistakes in the way they rolled out, and even, you know, Kim Bjorkegren admitted that pretty much immediately after the match. But so when someone like Pugh goes to CONCACAF W or BSG goes to CONCACAF W, like you're playing with your national team, right? And so you're building a certain speed of play and you're building connections with the national team. And then you come back within your club team and the pace is a little bit different and the approach is a little bit different. And you could just see coming back from CONCACAF how those final things were just not quite clicking. Obviously, Pugh also misses a game after CONCACAF. And I think that BSG to Pugh goal is this indicator of like, yes, Louisville gave them a ton of space. However, Bianca St. George being able to see that space, hit that ball so nicely weighted, Pugh hitting it on the outside of her foot to get that really nice touch to set her up basically just right in front of goal and slot it into the back of the net. Those kinds of connections, that felt very much to be like, okay, we've had a couple weeks since July, and this is finally like, oh, they're back on the same page again, which is great.
Yeah, that's exactly like how I felt a bit too. I think that's something that we've been speaking a little bit about during, well, now the month of August because it's September now, but during August we just like we're wondering that a little bit. Like sometimes it takes players, especially players who balance club and country, to kind of maybe get reacclimated to things when they come back into club play. And I think BSG is a player that we kind of maybe saw a bit of that disjointedness, but maybe Pugh, it took a little while to get going as well.
For Pugh, I think it's the opposite problem. I think she's like, go, 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 go. And she thinks so quickly and she moves so quickly. And on the U.S. women's national team level, she can just go like full hilt. Whereas with the Red Stars, it's a little bit more of like check back and make sure they see where you're moving and just make sure that you're not, I just think that the speed with which Chicago moves versus the U.S. right now is just completely different. And I think that she was just maybe moving a little too fast for her.
Yeah, no, I think there have been some moments. There were definitely some moments where I think not just in this game, but maybe even some of the other matches in August, perhaps that San Diego, that 1-0 loss to San Diego might be the best example where you can maybe kind of see some of the frustration at times kind of set in, in a gamer like Pugh, quite frankly. And then sort of fast forwarding that to a match like this, where just you're playing a struggling team and you're noticing right away what they're giving you and you're taking advantage of those things, you know? And I think you could sort of see that in those games, whether it's against Racing, this recent game against Racing, or a game against, Gotham, or the bottom table teams, quite frankly, where Chicago can maybe say like, this is one we can kind of, go out and take it to him. But in this game in particular, we're talking about a scoreline that had already ballooned to 3-0.
Yeah.
Before the half hour mark even like hits, right? And I think maybe to look at the Louisville side for a little bit, you see like Alex, she did come out of this game like just like 10 minutes later, like after Nagasato records this brace in the span of like 5 minutes, and like Bjorkegren just being like, well, let's just try something else here. Like, let's just see like what's going on. And it like you could just sort of see like two teams in very different areas and phases of their season at the moment. It was almost as if like we saw Chicago being the team playing with that sense of urgency a bit, versus, Louisville that is like very clearly trying to just like make their way and navigate the remainder of the season, which I think in certain aspects like that was also nice to see, because this is it. Like, this is the final stretch. Like, we've heard countless times in the past from this Red Stars team and this culture around the players where it's like, okay, like the playoffs actually start now.
Right.
Like, this is where it's at, and this is where we have to start kind of maybe like turning it on. So kind of, I don't know if I want to say that. No, I'm not surprised that Chicago went out here and got a win against Tracy, but I don't know if either of us could have anticipated that it was going to be like a 4-0 drubbing.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is game state, right? Like, you get one really nice goal and then you hammer in 2 quick set piece goals. Like, that's just a disaster game for the other team, honestly. Maybe mentally the first goal goes in and you are still sort of reeling from that, and then really nice delivery from Pugh and really nice touches from Nagasato, especially that second goal that she scored just kind of by sort of nudging it with the back of her foot to get it on frame. Just really lovely, nicely done. But nothing like too special, right? Just very direct, just like bam, bam, ball in the back of the net. And then, I think at that point, Louisville was just trying to get to halftime without giving up more. And then they obviously made some adjustments in the second half that put Chicago on their heels a little bit. But like, I think I mentioned this in the piece I wrote this week, which is also with that 3-back. And I do think it was also very significant that Tatum Milazzo was okay.
Yeah.
I think the team got very lucky there. If you score first, the 3-back works a lot better ultimately, because it is set up to protect. It's set up to chase a lead, but also really protect a lead when you can. And so we've seen in the past, in the last 2 months or so, or the last 6 weeks, teams not allow Chicago that space to get in behind and score first. And then that subsequent pressure on the back 3 becomes a problem. And so I thought that there was a certain element of confidence that the defense was playing with as well. And I think it came from the offense.
Yeah, no, I feel you 100% on that. I think maybe like we're not really talking about this later goal just because I don't know if I'm it's not ready yet, but like Yuki Nagasato, like should we talk about her specifically in this match? I mean, player coming back to the Red Stars, and the production obviously has looked a little bit different from performances that we've seen from Yuki in the past with the Red Stars, and to sort of like see her be able to get out here, and technically speaking, this is a former club of hers in NWSL, and go out there and kind of get a brace against Racing. I thought was like really nice. It appeared to be very, very special for her, just sort of like maybe perhaps like her explaining as well, like kind of like via her social media, that like throwing up the 2 was like because she actually wanted 2 beers, not 1. Like if she went out there and got a goal, like she was owed a beer, and now she got 2 goals, so it means it's actually 2 beers instead. So happy to see that. But well,
I would say for Yuki as well, I was more thrilled about the assist that she actually got in the second half. I think that was the one where you're like, that's Yuki Nagasato, baby.
And talking about the 4th goal, I'm like, that's actually, it's like, okay, so Pugh nailed another one. Yeah. Right. It's like, cool. Like Mal Pugh she's been doing that. She's been with the Red Stars. She's been coming out here and scoring goals. Right. But being able to see Nagasato kind of be that link, that sort of collaborative player that we know she's capable of being, I thought was equally important on that goal as well. But just not a lot of answers for Louisville on their side of things. I mean, they even tried to like make another adjustment like at halftime, like trying to bring in Jessica McDonald. But maybe now is a good time, Lawrence, if you want to pull up some of the maps here. Maybe we should start with the Pass Network first.
Here's Chicago's. Obviously you can see the monster games that Pugh and Nagasato had.
Go.
Yeah. But I think it's also significant. Just look at the orange that we're seeing from Milazzo and Kowalski. I think that they just were progressing the ball really well. They weren't actually using the wing backs as much, And as you can see, Hill had to move around a little bit, so that's why her placement is a little bit odd. But yeah, just good distribution, I think, outside. And then in addition to that, we saw a number of good ball distribution moments from the inside of that midfield. And I think that is something that we haven't always seen. So that was exciting to see.
Yeah. And I would imagine, like, if you look at something like this and you see like Malazzo's circle, or if you see like DiBernardo's circle, or if you just see like the lines between like a Nagasato and a Pugh, that's some good stuff. Like that's the like legitimate data that you look at and you're like, you know what? I think I could put money on the Chicago Red Stars. It looks real good. And if you're the betting type, just know that PointsBet Sportsbook is counting down the days until the football season with a new offer every day until the season kicks off. From now until September 8th, PointsBet Power Hour will unlock a new daily offer from 12 to 1 o'clock Chicago time. So please sign up for PointsBet now using code CHGO to also get risk-free bets up to $2,000. You can download the PointsBet app today and use code CHGO to take advantage of this limited time offer. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to get too high on your own supply, right? Like it's nice to see the Red Stars.
It's one game.
It's nice to see the Red Stars go out there and get a big old dub like this, against a struggling bottom half team. But it's one game, right? But I also think that kind of goes in line with Chicago's whole mantra that it's always been during this time of the season, where it's just like you can only take it one game at a time, take the next game in front of you, and then the next game after that, right? But the schedule's a little bit different right now. So there is no immediate Red Stars game that's going to be taking place after this Louisville game. So it's like you have this massive win. You probably have a ton of momentum coming out of this game, energy, enthusiasm, etc. But you don't have that immediate game to sort of roll into, right? Like you don't have that immediate game to say like, cool, we're going to build on this next week. Next week is actually 2 weeks out, so what's happening right now is this international break. And we wanted to take the time to maybe talk about this a little bit and sort of bridge these two things together, because the Red Stars still have a road game when they do come back to NWSL play, which will be against, I believe it's All Rain coming up. And
then they have a 3-game week coming back.
In the meantime, we're going to see, Mallory Pugh, Alyssa Nair are off on U.S. women's national team duty. They have a pair of friendlies that are going to be playing against Nigeria. And then we've got BSG. Bianca St. George is going to be spending time with Canada, and they're going to face off against Australia.
They're going all the way to Australia. Yeah.
It's a lengthy trip here, for BSG and Canada. So I'm a little curious, like if we want to maybe keep an eye on the radar ahead as well, because in October, the United States women's national team have a pretty lengthy trip then as well. They're going to be heading to Europe to have a couple of friendlies in October as well, one of which is going to be against England.
Right.
And another team that's going to be announced later, they said, but hasn't been announced just yet. But here we are. We got 1 month left for the Red Stars calendar season. And arguably like 3 very important players to their club, to their starting 11, are going to be in and out a bit. And we're talking about making that transition out of July into August and kind of seeing that payoff come very late in the month. And I'm a little curious how are things going to look for the Red Stars in this final month?
Yeah, this has been an interesting year in that regard, I think, because traditionally we think of these years in between major tournaments as these are the club years. You spend a little bit more time with your club. Obviously CONCACAF W changing its format, I think changed that a little bit. Though obviously it was a quick tournament and the part of it was in that international break. But I think it has felt a little bit like Pugh's been in and out. And I actually even want to go back to the concussion that she suffered at the beginning of the regular season, where she was out for, I think, 3 games and then, or maybe 4, I don't remember exactly. So she was out for a couple games.
It was like some of Challenge Cup and some of
regular season, right? Yeah. And then she comes, I think maybe the first 2 games of regular season, that feels right. And then she comes back in, does really, really well. She's scoring a lot, then leaves for CONCACAF, comes back. It's a little bit of an adjustment period back. I think, again, also for BSG, and it's hard to discount just how important BSG is to the Red Stars attack. Like, she was a key integral piece of what they were doing at the beginning of the season to get those results. Now she's getting back into her groove. She's going to go play with Canada. As we saw in CONCACAF, I'm not entirely sure how much she's going to play. We have another disruption here. This one's going to be shorter, right? It's not this kind of extended camp the way that we saw in July, but it's a factor. I do think that it's going to be something that the team's going to have to weather a little bit, even just not getting to have as much training time with those players, because what we saw in this Louisville game is how good it can be when they're on the same page. But they don't really have the benefit with only 5 games left to not be on the same page, especially in the attack, because they're running out of time. I mean, they're not really being given the time to build that momentum. And they're also opposite of last year. They're playing very differently, and it does require that connectivity. It's not just like, oh, we can go out here and be really compact and really focused. It's like, no, we actually have to connect. And I think that's a more difficult thing to do. So no big alarm bells, but it is a concern, I think, for everybody, this in and out with these international periods, because, you know, this next World Cup has just come up real quick, and all of these international breaks from now until next June are going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, let's just like play hypotheticals here. Like it's September. World Cup is next summer. You've got what, 8-ish months, maybe, you know, of prep time in the build up to the roster being named, and then heading off to go compete for a World Cup. It's not a lot of time, and because of that, it just sort of feels like a lot of things might feel kind of accelerated if you're a player like, you know, Nair or Pugh or BSG, or even like a Sandra Davidson, right? Who's rehabbing her way back, you know, from that ACL.
Yeah, she has to be at about the 6-month mark now. Which,
doing small touches, probably, you know, just sort of how that stuff goes. But I am kind of curious. It is something I think that we are going to be keeping an eye on for this Red Stars team, especially just sort of, you know, like with their place in the standings right now on that table, you know, kind of really just hanging out in that 6th place you see there with 26 points.
Yeah, let's do let's do a little bit of like standingsography here. Like, so it's tight, right? We've still only got 5 points between 1st and 6th. San Diego, I mean, at this point, I actually kind of like them for the Shield. I think that they've got a better run in than some other teams, including the fact that they're going to get a boost from sort of moving into their permanent home in the middle of September. I think that they've done just enough to clinch. I really do.
I do too.
But Houston, Kansas City, I think that the Red Stars, I think those are catchable teams. Not catchable, but just obviously the Red Stars will be playing Kansas City. And they will also be playing the Dash one more time before the end of the season. So those are going to be really crucial in terms of getting the results. And then Angel City, they also play. So the Red Stars have a couple games that they really need to, at the very least, not lose to maintain this, because we've talked about this before, right? Underneath Angel City, you've got Orlando. Not all of these teams can make the playoffs, and they're all going to be making that push. And again, you look at like Chicago's history going to the West Coast. I don't know what happens in that OL Reign game. They've played well on Cheney Field before. Lumen's a little bit of a different monster. So it's going to be stressful, I think, for Red Stars fans, but hopefully exciting, right?
Yeah, I hope it's exciting. I'm with you on San Diego. It's like, yeah, they're gonna lose somebody like an Alex Morgan, a Naomi Girma, in between those moments, but they've done a good job in the past of sort of navigating things in the absence of those players. And I just think with the games remaining, you know, even if they maybe split some things, like a win, loss, draw kind of energy, like that's going to be enough for them to sort of, claim that shield.
I think that win over Portland last weekend was a
It might have really propelled them
Yeah.
to start really start talking the talk.
Yep.
It's like they've been walking the walk.
Yeah.
But now you can actually talk some of that talk because you've been walking the walk. So
Yep.
I would love to see it for sure. It's a great storyline, you know what I mean? But on the other side of that, for Chicago, it's like you kind of look at the table in front of you and say, it's like a 5-point swing here. Like, do we want to try to chase the shield? Like, what is this going to look like? And that's great energy to have if you're a pro athlete, you're a competitor, you're going to want to try to do that, But
man, Chicago. So just to give like a full rundown, they play the Reign, Kansas City, Houston, Portland, and Angel City. Every single game in this run-in is against a playoff competitor.
Playoff team. Yeah. So I think like maybe now, present day more than ever. Like that whole like age-old Red Stars mantra of like, final month of the regular season, playoff starts now. Let's go. Like perhaps now more than ever, like that is actually truly the reality for this team. I think maybe you have to shift to that a little bit more, lean into that a little bit more versus that mentality of like, you can only take one game at a time and what's in front of you. It's like you kind of got to start making this transition. To that latter one on the spectrum. And I'm curious to see what it looks like, what it feels like, quite frankly. Just because again, we've been talking about how this team has maybe struggled a bit, with this availability report, players coming on, players coming off.
But one thing to follow on that, right?
Setting you up.
I'm sorry, I don't want to steal your seg. You want to go for it?
No, I'm teeing you up, buddy.
Okay, Is Morgan Guitra made the bench last weekend, which is I think a really exciting development. This has been a long, slow process of Morgan Guitra with her calf injury, and I've said this a million times. I think that it is true. When the team says calf, everybody knows what else is working down there, right? The calf is very close to the Achilles. You have tendons. You can sometimes have plantar fascia become an issue. There are nerve endings down there. God knows what the long road has been back for Morgan Guitra, and it does seem like there were moments where she had some serious setbacks. And I think the team, the player, just really hoping that this is the comeback that's for real. And that would be really great to see as well. Cause it's like kind of like a secret superpower for the team, right? It's like, you think that we're one thing, but what if we have Morgan Guitra,
Yeah, no, honestly, I mean, we're thinking it, right? Yeah. We're paying attention to it. We're watching it. And I think that goes maybe it goes in line a little bit with what we've been talking about with players like Pugh or BSG, sort of maybe needing the time to get reintegrated back into the team. I would imagine with somebody like Guitra, missing most of the season, that's equally true for her. But I think even if you got Morgan Guitra, that down the stretch of the final remainder of the season can give you
there it is.
What, 60 minutes? Like, can you imagine a Morgan Guitra available for a good solid 60 minutes against a Portland Thornside?
I mean, it'd be huge.
I'm like away. Park,
I think that and I was having this thought as we were talking, and this was actually something that Alyssa Nair said this week as well, is the Red Stars have been very streaky over the last 6-7 weeks, which is that like they're not drawing anymore. They started the season with you get some tough points, right? Like tough point against Portland, tough point against North Carolina, like that unbeaten streak, which was this mixture of draws and wins. And sometimes in playoffs, you don't actually want that. Sometimes you do want to be pushing for like all or nothing. I think that there's a philosophy that runs with that. But I think a player like Guitra is the kind of player that can like save you a point if you need that, right? Whether it's in just controlling the run of play or shoring things up defensively. It makes it less do or die every time you run out on the pitch. And I think against some of these teams, that's going to be huge because we have this magic number issue with all of these games, which is that it's not a 3-point swing. It's a 6-point swing, win or lose, which can work in Chicago's favor, obviously, or can really work against them. So if they've got 5 games left, they might lose 2 of them.
Yeah.
But you have to then make sure that the other 3 you win.
Yep.
And I think that is a difficult thing, because it's not only, we talk about this every year, it's not just about building your points, it's about taking points away from your opponent. And with all of these games, that element is going to be important now. However, because Chicago is already above the playoff line, they can afford to get some draws, they can afford to shut some things down. But you need those veteran players to be able to do that for you. You might say that it's only what you need.
Is it?
Only wins you need.
There you go.
The only wins you need is only what you need. Owen, it stands for only what you need. It's a 100% plant-based protein shake that gives you nutrition that works as hard as you do. All of their products are free of artificial ingredients, allergen-friendly, no gluten or dairy, easily digestible. And Owen and CHGO have partnered up to give you an awesome offer. You can get 20% off your first purchase at liveowen.com, LIVEOWYN.com, with the code CHGO20. Plant-based protein. More and more people are going plant-based. More athletes, you know.
Actually, this is true.
It's like just true.
I do wonder if maybe because not everyone's getting time off, right? We're talking about how some of these players are going for international duty, but I do wonder if perhaps these extra days will be helpful for some of these Red Stars players, you know, with this sort of, you know, with this game against all rain kind of, you know, lurking in the near future here. I'm thinking about, like, you know, player like you know, like Aaron Wright, who found herself quickly back on that injury report, you know, once more. You know, obviously we saw Tatum and Lazo come on back.
Sarah Lubert, hopefully.
Sarah Lubert is obviously picked up a knock, apparently. Chelsea Darber, a player that we're still looking to see possibly build some minutes. You know, they made this signing for a player who I think is featured in 2 games this year for a handful of minutes. There hasn't been what I would consider, you know, impactful minutes. So I just wonder if this time could be, you know, a little bit of a final blessing in disguise for some players on this roster before they have to really kind of just step back.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? That there's this international break, and then there's the 5 games, and then there's another international break, and then the playoffs. Like, that's a little bit fast and furious, it feels like. But it's just the nature. I mean, this happens every year. I mean, we remember in 2019 when Sam Kerr and I think one of the other Australians, and I forget who it was, stayed actually
a lot of minutes.
Well, they stayed in the States for that international break before playoffs. They didn't go. And so you do have players making those choices, but that was right after a World Cup. So it's a little bit different. Before a World Cup, I don't think anybody's turning call-ups down. So I think the priorities are a little bit different, as well they should be. So, I mean, maybe like this is a good chance to switch over. Like, I've been thinking about this a little bit because of the Sky, actually. So the Sky, everybody knows what's going on with the Sky. They're in the semifinals. They're tied 1-1, but they keep getting snubbed for individual awards. Like they didn't get the all defense. No one was on the two all defensive teams. They got 2 votes for 6th player, but that was almost unanimous for Brianna Jones. Who knows what's going to happen for all WNBA. I would hope they'd have some paper on, but I've had this thought where I was like, man, this has been a really good season from them. And it's going to be like, unless they win the title, it's going to be completely erased.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to look at the individual awards from this season and be like, oh, Chicago must not have been that good. But
and it's just simply not true.
So I want to switch it over to the Red Stars. Cause I think with the Pugh 2 goals, she was like kind of slipping in that MVP race, right? Like, she was at 6 goals. She was at 3 assists, which obviously is not bad, but now she's at 8 goals and 5 assists.
Yeah.
Probably not going to catch Golden Boot. But is she an MVP finalist to you, Sandra?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see Mal Pugh like as part of the finalists once again. We saw her there last year, and she had less under her belt.
Yeah,
right? I think it was like 6-4.
Right.
I think in her debut season with the Red Stars, and I don't know how you go from a season like that and to a season like this where you sort of amplify and crank up your production and not get a sniff at that award. I don't know if she's going to be the winner. I think there's players who
There's a lot of
are
really
legitimate contenders in front of her, but it typically boils down to about 5 finalists.
Yeah.
To vote for at the end of the season. And I think if you're kind of looking at saying like, okay, here's a handful of finalists, I think that you have a case for Pugh. A lot of times when I'm doing my voting or I'm thinking about stuff like that, like I break it down to like a number of things. Like, yeah, of course I'm looking at production and stuff like that for a player and what they provide for their team, but also like, what does that mean if you take them away from that specific team, right? A, and then B, for me, the other thing is, is this player somebody that any one of the bottom half table teams would make a move for immediately? Right. And I think the answer is 100%. Like you're looking at any of the bottom half table teams, if they would make a move for somebody like a Mal Pugh, 100% they would do it. And if you take Mal Pugh away from the Chicago Red Stars in this very important final month of the season, I think you're saying, like pretty loudly, quite frankly. So it matches like all of those 3 of the criteria for me.
And I also just think, again, I think she provides a different look for MVP, right? Because as we can see here, she's in the top 4 for goals scored, but also top 3 for assists, which is not something that anybody else in that goal scoring list can say. And so I think that when you look at her as a playmaker, like you said, it's kind of ramping up what she did last season. Like I said, it's a different look for MVP, and I don't think it's necessarily supported by some of the other. If it was a year like last year, I'd say absolutely, right? But it's not. We're seeing some more clear cut. I do think
things have leveled themselves out a bit.
And I think it's going to go to a striker, and I think it's going to go to one of the strikers that is in that final Golden Boot race. So then, like, next question. Not been an amazing year for defense in the NWSL, which is exciting. In a way.
Yeah.
Tatum Milazzo, legit defender of the year contender though, right?
Listen, I think if the Red Stars are in the top 4 right now versus having fallen to a 6th place position for several weeks now, there's a little bit of a different conversation around Tatum Milazzo.
Really? You think 4 versus 6 makes a difference?
I do, because I think that, no disrespect to, our colleagues in the space, but, Claire, I remember in 2019, when we had
I see what you're saying. Not for you, but just for like whether she gets the recognition. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, you and I had to do a lot of yelling online and in our work about the fact that Casey Short came out and turned her like World Cup snub into like a ridiculous club campaign. Yeah. And she ended up not getting that accolade. And it was, even that was also considered a snub. And it was such a snub that Becky Sauerbrunn had to come out and say that it was insane that she didn't get it. So, I not to compare Kruger and Milazzo, right? But I do think that your team's place, in the standings or across the league, has a effect on individual awards, and it sucks, but it's just simply true. And we see that like in general in professional sports. My God, like we started talking about awards right now with the fact that you have the Chicago Sky not named for any defensive positions, which is weird because it's the opposite effect for them, right? Like they were largely in first place for the entirety of the season.
Tied for best record in the whole league.
They ended up the number 2 seed overall. They had an excellent record, and yet, right? And
number 2 seed, but like I'm always just like, it was the same record as Vegas.
And yet, I remember you and I going to cover an NWSL Champions Final. We chatted a bit with Abby Urseg, and she made a really great point because they, of course, the Courage at the time had defeated the Chicago Red Stars to go to another championship final, and the same record, different day, right? But it was cool to talk to her about having to go through Chicago, to go to another championship final, and to talk about Nagasato specifically, who had a great season even then, wasn't getting recognition. I believe the recognition that she got that year was a second team.
I think it was second team.
It was the only recognition she got. It was the best second team.
Yep.
And she said, a lot of people aren't going to pay attention to that until they have to pay attention to it. And the next year, people absolutely had to pay attention because you were talking about an 8-8, 8 goals, eight assists. Like Nagasato was everywhere. And people were like, oh, like Yuki Nagasato is an amazing player. And then you have people who cover the team locally, and we're just sitting here like, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
So I think with there's a little bit of that with Sadie Milazzo. I think she had a bit of a breakout season last year for this team, yet for some reason was not viewed as a legitimate contender for Rookie of the Year because of the season that Trinity Rodman was having, and because of maybe a season that like Emily Fox was having for racing. She was not viewed as like maybe someone to be a legitimate front runner for Rookie of the Year. Unfortunate, right? This team ends up going all the way to the final. Yeah. So here we are in her sophomore season. Yeah. And with the exception of being subbed out of that previous match, she had mostly been on pace to perhaps be Chicago's Iron Woman this year. That's no longer something she can obtain.
Yeah, I think it's Morris. I think Morris is,
She's absolutely been an integral piece of the Chicago Red Stars.
Well, she's also, if the NWSL had an MIP award, I would say that she would
and maybe this is a good moment to maybe try to say, like, you know what, they should start including like an MIP award, because I've been thinking about them. Like, there's actually a number of players
who deserve recognition for that. Yeah.
Who could probably contend for an MIP award. But, if you add an additional award, that means you add, bonuses and things like that. So I'm sure that those conversations have to be had by people with power to do that. But 100%. And it's wild to even think that it's considered perhaps it's maybe like an MIP performance, because she's going from having to slot in her rookie season, most improved.
Oh, most improved player.
Most improved player. Sorry. I just saw you pop up. It means most improved player. And you see that, I think you've seen that in other leagues and stuff like that. So, or maybe they refer to it as like the sixth man, like in NBA or stuff like that. So just sort of seeing her go from, this, going from a season where it's like you could have had like a lot of deer in headlights kind of moment, but still really kind of take control of that in her first season, and then kind of come into the second season. And it's sort of, there's also the argument, it's like, oh, well, is it really like in most improved, or is she just like continuing like her development, quite frankly, in these types of roles for Chicago. But I think there's a lot there to look at, point at, be proud of. I think I wouldn't be surprised if maybe she racks up team awards. I don't know if she'll actually be on the list of any finalists for NWSL League, like individual awards. But, best defender or defender of the year is going to be real interesting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and it was mentioned in the comments, there's a front runner. There's a clear front runner, I think, for defensive player of the year. But I also think it's interesting because Girma is also a rookie of the year front runner, though I think ultimately maybe that goes to Ordonez.
I think it's going to start. I think things are going to start swinging themselves out.
Like maybe Girma gets defender, but not rookie, which is kind of a fascinating.
Which is funny. Yeah, that's a pretty established award. But I just am like, the thing for me is it's funny because of how like Rookie of the Year has sort of found itself shaking out towards the end of this season here, because Chicago is literally a team with like 5 to 7 rookies on their roster.
Right. I think I said this early in the season. It's like they should all get just like a collective.
The idea, the thing that's like frustrating me in my brain, because I know you and I are all over the place. We're probably getting our awards pieces ready. You know what I mean? It's just like we're just getting in the zone. It's end of season. So it's just like what is grinding my gears a bit is like that I am aware of this fact, right? As someone who is local to Chicago, who covers the Red Stars with you, and has done so for X amount of years, right? Just like how these things are going to shake out. And it's the fact that Chicago may not have one of their rookies as a finalist for Rookie of the Year is already upsetting me. It's already baffling to me. But I mean, maybe, that's obviously,
but it's also just such a strong rookie class.
I was going to say, like, maybe that just means that it's just like, listen, the rookie class this year just really came out. Yeah. Did some amazing things. Yeah. for for pumpkin spice award
exactly.
season.
It's pumpkin spice and award season.
It's
actually it's like it's film festival season too.
It is.
Like it truly is. Like we're doing awards, we're doing culture, we're doing sweaters, we're doing lattes, we're doing all of it. Yeah.
Speaking of good stuff, you should probably put in your body, Claire.
Oh yeah. Right. This is like maybe the opposite of pumpkin spice, or this opens up the possibility of pumpkin spice later in your day is athletic greens. What is athletic greens? It is 75. It's with one delicious scoop. You're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things. What do you think it would taste like to put your athletic greens into a pumpkin spice smoothie? Be kind of like,
I think it would just be overpowered by the pumpkin. Pumpkin is
I think it would, right? Yeah.
Pumpkin spice is just that kind of season, baby. Like it'll just like once you put a little bit of it in anything, it's like bam. That's what it tastes like. It's like it's not gonna taste like anything else but pumpkin spice. But maybe a little bit of Owen, maybe a little bit of
right. Just sort of mix and match your athletic greens.
And and
which
the Red Stars should do
as it says in the read, it costs you less than $3 a day. It is cheaper than your cold brew habit, which means that it is absolutely cheaper than your pumpkin spice latte habit.
Just bring me back the apple cider donuts, man.
I know, man. I feel bad now. The fact that I was
man. Jeez. Before we close out, Claire, we got to show some love to Vanessa DiBernardo. We're talking a little bit about the awards, and
John brought that up, which is a good point.
We not too long ago, I think it was during that Angel City game, I was like, man, what is Vanessa DiBernardo got to do to start getting some love, start getting some recognition, respect on the TL, quite frankly. I think I threw out some numbers and stats at the time. She was leading midfielders, on the Red Stars in a number of areas. And she's a 9-year veteran of the league and is doing all of these performances in an entirely new position that's been asked of her while on the Red Stars, all with one team. It's at the time I'd said like long shot kind of MVP, but really I really mean like long shot, just because of the other individual performances that are out there. But again, if we're looking at just team awards, maybe she's someone that is considered for some Red Star specific awards. But of course, captain, my captain, gotta absolutely shout out and pay the respects to 150 caps, all with the Red Stars.
This was, again, something that I kind of wrote about this week. I think the story of this season is hard to, and we talked about this in the last couple of weeks during that the losing period, not like quite a streak, but the losses, where what is the story of this season? What are the expectations of this season? What is the arc of this season? And we're always trying to figure that out, right? And I think, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, it does depend on where it lands. If they land outside of playoffs, it becomes more of a conversation about maybe the front office and what they didn't do to support the team. If they land inside of playoffs, I do think that a big part of this story is the veterans that are still there and are still available. So you look at like Nair, Wright, DiBernardo, Colaprico, Guitra. I really want to include Guitra because I think she's been there day in and day out, just even though she cannot play. Davidson has also been in market a lot this season to try to help because they know that that's necessary and important, right? Yep. And I think what they have done this season in new roles, in communicating clearly with their teammates in a new system, and just even committing physically to what this season has become for them, that's the story. It's definitely about some young ballers coming in and doing a great job, but you don't get that much buy-in. You look at some place like Louisville, and they're struggling to integrate that kind of young talent. And it takes a steady hand in a coaching staff, but I think that these veterans have really done something pretty incredible this season, and I hope that they are at least rewarded. I think we've already seen. Yeah, they're probably not going to be rewarded with a ton of individual awards. Like DiBernardo has not made Team of the Month this season yet. I don't think. Nope. And yet So you at least want it to be like, I really don't want this to be the first team that falls out of playoffs. I just really don't, because I don't think that the players on the pitch deserve that. And so I'm invested. I guess that's all I'm saying. I'm invested in these last 5 games. Yeah.
Listen, we set it up in the beginning of this year. We said we're not going in with any expectations upon this team. It's not fair to the young players and first-year players who are coming in. And it's really not fair to the players who have been here a very, very long time.
Right.
But here we are, September, the final month of the season, and we are that. We've gone from no expectations to it, where at the very least we are humbly invested
exactly.
into the end.
Right. It's
results.
like you're watching and you go, I want something. Yeah.
It's like, oh no, I care so much and want so many good things for them. So that's where we are right now. No preview, obviously, in this one. Tune in to the U.S. Women's National Team games. I'm sure we'll have some things to say about that next week when we do have to preview All Rain. Talk a little bit about the international window. Thank you all so much for joining us today on CHGO Red Stars Podcast. We appreciate everybody. Like, whenever you come through and hang out with us live and participate in the chat and talk about, pumpkin spice and Chicago Red Stars and all the above. It's always a good time on Fridays here. So just want to know that the best way for you to support us is with a CHGO membership. And the best way to do that is head on over to allchgo.com and sign up for one. You get access to podcasts, live shows on every single Chicago team every day. You get some post-game shows. You get access to premium written content for members. Writing by Claire at allchgo.com. You get a t-shirt when you become a member and access to the members-only Discord, the CHGO Lounge. So sign on up for a CHGO membership. And everybody, come back and join us next week. We'll be talking about all things Chicago Red Stars. Peace.